without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first we're going to do some introductions. I'm going to turn it over to Scott and Randy to first introduce themselves, and then I'll take it away from there. So Scott, you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks so much, Rachel. Really appreciate everybody being here today. Super excited about this. My name is Scott Martin. I am a licensed architect, but I like to pretend and put my planner hat on as much as possible. I've been here with RRM for a little over 2 decades now, 21 years. So have seen a lot of change and am a passionate housing advocate. So we'll get a little bit more to that later, but excited to be here today and share some ADU knowledge with you.
Thanks, Scott. I'm Randy Russum. I am more than 30-year architect. Been with RM for over a decade now, and have been instrumental in leading pre-approved ADU projects across the state, perhaps 15 jurisdictions at this point, as well as a few small ones along the way. So I think we got a lot of fertile ground to cover here.
Thank you both. And my name is Rachel Hollander. Some of you might know me as Rachel Raynor, just got married, so excited to share that news with folks that maybe I know and that hopefully I will know after today. And I just celebrated 8 years at RRM on Sunday, so that's exciting. Can't believe how fast time flies. I am a land use planner at RRM, and I've helped write or amend jurisdictions' ADU ordinances to reflect current or recent state law updates, and then have also acted as agent or applicant for both ministerial and discretionary ADUs in the state, but predominantly in the Central Coast section or region. So I think we're all aware of what ADUs are. They have been around for a while, but as we've seen, there's been a lot of state law changes that have, required or necessitated amendments to ADU law over the past several years. Obviously, I think we all know what accessory dwelling units are and see their benefit in the communities that we live and work and play in. And I think the state has also recognized the need for them by requiring or mandating these more recent state law changes to ADU law, requiring and some of those changes, recent changes, have eliminated owner occupancy requirements. There has been more stringent processing timelines that the state has enforced with regard to ADU applications to help further streamline the process for ministerial ADUs in the state. Um, there's also been greater flexibility in height requirements and or locations of proposed ADUs on a property. And then also I mentioned the state or housing and community development department's enforcement procedures. Recent state law has added the ADU state laws to the list of statutes that HCD can enforce. It's certainly been their ADU portal has been something that I've tapped into on projects where maybe a jurisdiction isn't sticking to a timeline, and they're able to further enforce or just reiterate the timelines that ADUs are able to be processed under. And so I think we all recognize the benefit of ADUs, and it provides a little bit more of an attainable kind of type of housing for residents in our communities. Certainly, maybe more affordable for residents, allows for that incremental or gentle density within neighborhoods. I think the importance that I've seen, especially through this 6th cycle housing element process that jurisdictions have been going through these last several years, is the relationship of ADUs to housing elements and the role that they play. They're definitely not a silver bullet by any means, but I do think that they have been a strategy for jurisdictions to, account ADUs and account for past ADUs and how that reflects for future ADUs and the targets that they can meet towards a jurisdiction's RENA. And then in addition to that, the the programs in jurisdictions' housing plans and their housing elements, where jurisdictions have included programs to either prepare pre-approved ADU plans if they don't already have them, and taking it even maybe one step further of how you can continue as a jurisdiction to facilitate the production of ADUs in communities, whether that's increased education to property owners of the process, or potentially even outreach for additional amendments that could be incorporated into the ADU ordinance to make it either easier or better more understandable for potential applicants, or maybe easier for integration into a particular property. So I think there's a lot of different facets that ADUs play, and we're going to get into that a little bit, but just kind of wanted to set the stage for us as we dive into how we're all three interact with ADUs in our day-to-day. For those just entering the webinar, just wanted to take a quick beat. We have a series of questions that we're going to kind of use to guide our conversation here today. Would love for it to be a dialogue at the end of the session and open it up to the attendees. Feel free to put questions in the chat feature, or we'll save some time at the end if folks want to verbally pose questions or comments. And we just ask that you raise your virtual hand to ask those to us. So with that, we're going to first kind of start, Scott and Randy kind of briefly shared some of their roles in housing and ADUs, but wanted to more kind of hone in on what has sparked their interest in ADUs, or specifically pre-approved ADU plans. So I'm going to first pose that question to Scott, and then Randy, you can follow.
Somebody will jump in. No worries.
Either way.
Thanks, Rachel. I know that's a lot of setting the table, if you will. I will say on a personal level, since 2016, when the first sort of ADU law came out in the state of California, there's roughly 2 a year to keep up with that make slight modifications or changes, all to the efforts of streamlining. And that's really what we're going to talk a little bit about today. We're excited about that. The law, we can run in circles about the laws. So we're going to talk a little bit more on the implementation side, because that's where, as an architect, that's where I really get excited. And I have the pleasure to say that I started looking into ADUs much before that because of personal reasons. So this one rings home true to me. My why, if you will, about ADUs is the typical mother-in-law unit. Coming out of the recession back in the 08, 09 era, I was looking for a bigger house. I had a kid. I was looking to expand my family, and we couldn't afford anything. We were worried about budgets. And at the time, my mother-in-law was struggling with MS and needed a little bit more care, but wanted to be still engaged with the family. And so we did a multi-generational house. We took a existing house and we added on a accessory dwelling unit for my mother-in-law, and we all live technically under one roof. We've got separate space and clear boundaries. That's important, but it is personal to me. This was about 2011. I finished up. Just to throw an interesting stat out there, in 2011, the state saw roughly just under 1,000 ADUs. The most recent data I could find in 2022, the state saw and permitted about 25,000 ADUs. So that's a huge incremental increase, exponential to say the least. So that's my why. I'll let Randy touch base about his own.
Sounds like that's part of the reason why we're here. They're getting popular. Yeah, my story's a little bit different, but a little bit the same. I've just as the first ADU laws were starting to hit, and even proposed before they were adopted, I built my own ADU. It's actually behind Scott's head there in the image. That's the one. My purpose had to do with kids going off to college, wanting to have a place for them to come back. In fact, one came back and spent 6 months living there, and as well as housed my mother and father for a bit in transition. And We use it as a source of income and a guest house at different times, kind of just evolves. That coupled with the new ADU laws, the first round of them that came out as a local AIA chapter president and board member, we got very involved in helping cities review the laws, develop their own ADU ordinance and review it for them for compliance. And it really became month after month, a new city, new interest. And this was long before we actually had the pre-approved ADU concept out there. And so I think this is a great time to start talking about what is the difference between pre-approved ADU and a custom ADU like mine I have, Scott does, and probably a number of the others hiding back in those pictures there. The idea of the pre-approved ADU became a great method to get designs, get production off the shelves and out of people's heads and into the ground and into the cities. Instead of going from an architect and an engineer or maybe a draftsman, they don't require architects or engineers necessarily, to design these up and go through what some communities can be a very lengthy approval process. My particular custom, I'm in a historic home in a development with an HOA, and we had an ARC, and it took many rounds to get to where I was at. That as opposed to when we do a pre-approved ADU package, the city gets the opportunity to weigh in and design for that city. We're collaboratively do that with planners, and we go through the whole permitting process. So at the end of the day, we have sets of plans that are customized in the sense that they're customized for the location or the community with some customization features in it, but they've been through the full building review process and they're ready to be permitted if a person puts a site plan together. Many jurisdictions offer these up for free. And so you're not only saving the money, but you're saving the time. And for most people, the time is the valuable component of that. And they can move right into looking for someone to construct their place. So that comes down to a huge time and money savings.
For sure. And I think that's very important in this whole grand scheme of processing and getting through the permitting process as quickly as you can to achieve those goals. Kind of further setting the stage in terms of the changing legislative landscape that has revolved around ADUs quite recently. AB 1332, which took effect this past January, adds to that discussion of pre-approved plans, and it requires starting in January of 2025. So it gives a year of implementation when you think about it for jurisdictions to establish. The language is very specific in the bill. It requires an agency to establish a program for the pre-approval of ADUs. Doesn't say that jurisdictions have to create their own pre-approved plans, but that any and all ADU plan submissions must be accepted and posted to that jurisdiction's website. It also further requires a 30-day approval timeline for the jurisdiction if pre-approved ADU plans are utilized. So I think the nuts and bolts of that is, anyone can submit a ADU plan. Maybe it's not contextual to the neighborhood or the community, and the jurisdiction has to accept it. I think what we're going to dive in today is how to kind of get around that through more tailored pre-approved plans that Scott and Randy are going to talk about in their experience.
I think it's a good time to draw that line between at least what we expect to see at AB 1332, which are often pre-manufactured. They're companies coming in and dropping and getting their plans approved across the state, which are not contextually designed, probably boxes, very modern, versus the type of pre-approved ADU projects that we're discussing right now, which are customized to the context of a community. And there's pretty big distinction between those two and the product you get.
Randy, are you saying the cool modern thing that shows up on my Facebook feed doesn't belong everywhere in the state of California? That sounds
You
like
know,
your firm cares about not cool cutting edge architecture. Is that what you're getting
I
at?
have my subscription to Dwell also, and I see it every month. But and there's a lot of cool there, but it also, if you were to try to drop that into my historic little development there, there'd be a lot of hand wringing, I'll tell you that. If
Yeah,
not these parts.
I'll speak a little bit about contextualism in general and excited about that because I like cool modern architecture as much as the next person. I will say that, as a firm philosophy, RRM has always, been rooted in contextual architecture. We hope nothing more than you drive by our building and go, oh, that's the perfect building for this place. We don't hope you drive by and go, oh, that's an RRM project. That's not our goal. So at the root of much of what we do, that seems appropriate. Also tying into our own staff's passions is an affordability and a desire to provide housing. This state is, some estimate, over 1 million houses short of what the demand is out there to provide. So there is a desire to create obtainable, affordable housing in our local jurisdictions, places we work, places we know, places we live. We want to be able to provide much more affordable housing. There are ADUs that will always be the custom pool house or the beautiful guest house, and those are going to keep coming. But there's some interesting stats that something around 1 out of 3 ADUs qualifies, as under the 120% AMI to meet your moderate or affordable housing needs. That's almost twice as many as new custom builds or new production housing builds are accommodating those same even moderate needs. So there's proven stats that we're providing for a much more obtainable opportunity. And often that's not going to be the prefab slick cool thing that you see in a magazine. It doesn't mean there's not other prefab options that are really great. I don't want to totally discount those, but I will say there is a potential, and this will make some cities squeamish, is there is a potential to lose a decent amount of control rather rapidly if you can't have any say in architectural character or what the contextualism of your ADUs do look like. And that's where we think there's some real benefits to community specific designs. I know that step one for any community is some sort of educational tool. So if it really is that I'm seeing more ADUs showing up in my Facebook feed and I can't find anything at the counter when I go into my local planning department, I'm probably going to lean towards the Facebook feed, right? But if I go into my planning counter and I do get information about how to still meet all the state laws, how to pick one of a couple pre-approved ADUs off the shelf that meet contextual opportunities here in my own community, that's probably the route I'm going to go. You'll recognize probably more savings than not. Creating custom, or custom's a bad word, creating uniquely designed approved ADUs for a community allow for architectural style implications, allow for material options, allow us to look at different lot sizes and actually design product that fits within the traditional lotting patterns of a community. So if your traditional lot's only 100 feet deep and you only had a 20-foot setback, we need a 4-foot setback for these. We need a 10-foot setback. All of a sudden, you need a 12-foot box. And we can start to design towards those mechanisms that work really well and are tailored towards your own unique designs. That doesn't even come into like staff coordination and some of the technical needs of contextual architecture. What is appropriate in San Diego may not be appropriate up in the hills of Mammoth or other areas, whether it's topography or seismic calculations. wind or snow loads. We want to make sure that the available streamlined homes are being targeted in a way that's appropriate for place. And that's what I think the biggest advantage to sort of a custom ADU program can get you.
Just adding on to that, the intent changes. That there's customization as to what you're trying to accomplish. I don't know if you recall, Scott, but we've gone from jurisdictions that are focused on architecture. They want to see flashy architecture. They're a wealthy community. That's what their goal is. And what they're trying to do is prevent that modern thing from being craned into somebody's backyard as they cringe and want to create some other opportunities. Other communities are very much focused on getting more housing, getting more bedrooms. We've worked very hard to create affordable, efficient, 3-bedroom, 750 square foot ADUs. I mean, so when we get the opportunity to work with a community and not only dissect the style and the lots, but we also dissect what are the values, what are we trying to accomplish here? And I always find that a fun part. And I'm always shocked at how differing they can be from community to community.
Yep.
Scott, what advantages do you think that pre-approved plans offer to individual homeowners in terms of housing availability or affordability?
Well, whether it's, one that architects have done specific per place or even a prefab, is going to reduce some sort of cost. The soft costs of the architectural fee at a minimum, I think is really nice just to have some options. I know that Randy and I think about ADUs and size and opportunities and 1-bedroom versus 2 and but like I talked to my dad about that and he's just lost and confused. And what? How big does that mean? I don't know. Can it fit over there where that shed is? So just having something to look through to see some available options really can help the homeowner understand what's possible. And that's where I said it once, I'm going to say it again, education's really the key to all of this. We're going to talk about some pitfalls later. I don't want to ruin that, but helping your community understand what the process is and reducing that process as much as possible. If Randy said it earlier, if you're spending a year just to get an approved plan, that's just too much of a hurdle for many homeowners. So the advantage is time and money, that right off the bat. Hopefully with a quality pre-approved design, you're thinking about sustainability in your construction. You're thinking about longevity of the product. It's providing flexibility, whether it's your college kid now and your aging elder parent later, or you when you have to move out and give your house to your kid because they've got nowhere to buy, whatever it be, built-in flexibility and longevity, quality construction, those sorts of things, if you can build that into the design, are all allowing sort of that maximum utilization of the site. And that's really, like you say, that's how gentle density can be accepted and not feel like someone's, just converting the shed in their backyard.
I love the phrase gentle density. I just got to say that.
It's easy, it's soft.
I feel like it also, to the homeowner, it provides the option because they can see the process that unfolds through the pre-approved plan, or if they do want to maybe customize it to the point where it does maybe trigger additional review by the jurisdiction, they can kind of see both option, and if they can kind of ascertain whether the pre-approved plans can meet their goals in the long term, they might just proceed with that option as opposed to maybe going through the slightly more rigorous process. If maybe they want X, Y, or Z to be different than the pre-approved. I did want to ask Randy if there is room for customization or maybe changes to pre-approved plans.
Yeah, you just led right into that. Is kind of a sticky point there, because at the end of the day, we're getting a set of plans pre-approved. So whatever has been approved doesn't have a lot of room for customization. They are designed to meet the finish materials that are on on the main house, because that's one of the goals typically. So you've got, whether it's siding, roofing, whatever that is, we designed to accommodate that. But what we found is there are opportunities for further customization. Our structural designs are such that depending on the jurisdiction's comfort level, we've had some ADUs that actually can flex a couple of feet in length. Certainly changing out windows to sliding glass doors, moving interior walls, reorienting kitchens. There's a lot of little opportunities there, and those are sort of worked out with the jurisdiction, because at the end of the day, someone has to permit it, somebody has to inspect it and know what the heck they're inspecting. So there's a collaboration there to get there, but we build a surprising amount of customization. I think that comes out of our just having done a lot of stock plans for tracks and things like that, where they all want these options. So we try to use some of those tricks that we've learned, and I think it's been pretty successful so far. There's everybody wants something a little different. We're not going to hit every mark, but I think there's a lot of variety available.
Randy, second question for you, and Scott, feel free to obviously jump in, but how do you think that pre-approved ADU plans impact positively or maybe negatively the design and construction process? Maybe like from the design to kind of bringing it to reality and fruition on the ground.
I'll start, and Scott can follow up on this one. I think that one of the challenges of the design is someone else is designing it. We're designing it with staff to come up with the appropriate layout is going to fit in the most lots available in the jurisdiction. We've chosen with them the variety of units we might have. So there starts to get a little bit constricted in that regard. It's not open-ended, and I think for us, there's not a design limitation, but as an end user, there are certainly some in there. The other side, it speeds the construction process up. You're hitting the ground running. You're saving typically thousands, certainly with an architect, and then potentially savings through some permitting process. You're definitely saving thousands of dollars, many months of time, and we design for efficiency. We're not using code minimums, like conventional construction, which end up being over-designed in many cases. We're designing custom to the community, what the soil's like, what the wind speeds are like, what the you name it. All those pieces start coming together to be the most efficient path forward to getting something built.
Great. Rachel,
go
I'll just add one thing. It's been an eye-opener working for these different municipalities. I heard some stat like before ADU law was passed, so 2015, I think the city of LA alone had something like 75,000 unpermitted ADUs. So that's someone converting their garage illegally, not through a permit process. That's someone, living in a shed, doing whatever. I think the construction that we're hoping to change in the construction world is exactly that, a level of safety and comfort that when you go and you pull a set of documents, this is a stamped, engineered set of documents off a shelf, that you're getting quality construction that meets life safety needs and is approved by your local jurisdiction. And I think that goes a long, long way. I'll also add, I think there's something important about it being your local jurisdiction, that it is a product that some carpenter in the area is still building, that some local contractor is going out and providing jobs and thusly more housing and more income in your own city. And that means a lot to me. These are, some of them get pretty simple. And I think we had one city ask us, well, could you make it so I could get everything from Home Depot if I'm the local homeowner? Going, sure, but they still meet all the life safety and engineering requirements of the local jurisdiction and of course the state of California, which means energy efficiency and everything else that when it's often you'll find these new homes are much more efficient than the home they're sitting behind because they're built this year instead of 1950 or whatever. So there's
Funny
some
you
great,
brought
I
up
think, advantages.
Funny you brought up Home Depot, because that is one of our parameters, often is one of our parameters, is what is designing to what's available. You know, we're trying to stay within standard sizes and some of these things, if it were me, I'd be out there building it in my backyard, and I think Scott might do the same. And I think there are a number of people who take those things on, and the availability of the materials using very standard materials, standard sizes, really comes into play as we start laying these things out to make it as cheap and easy as we can. We're not the same product as a pre-manufactured.
What about the if they are pre-approved, like we had talked about when we were prepping for this session about the labor involved for keeping it local. Do you guys want to touch about that since we're talking about construction process at all? Local workers as compared to prefab.
Yeah, I just think that the types of homes that are coming out of pre-approved plans, Rachel, are going to be built by local workers quite often. Prefab may come flat shipped, if you will, on a cart that's just bolted together, where most of what we've seen from a pre-approved local jurisdiction is traditional site built sort of stuff. So keeping contractors in the area. That's important.
Our next question is, I'll direct it to Scott first, but Randy, feel free to jump in. Are there any pitfalls to avoid associated with pre-approved plans from a community perspective?
No, they're perfect. Everything works great. You don't have to worry about a thing. Everything just flies right on through. I will say there are some potential landmines. How about that? We haven't yet ran into a pitfall, but there are some challenges. And, the reality is, can you design a pre-approved plan that's going to work for 100% of your community? And I think the answer is no. We've tried, we've looked, and we've tried really hard, but with lot size customization, architectural variation, unique situations of topography or individual site uniqueness, I'm going to say you can't. There just may be some instances where no matter how many pre-approved options you have, there may not be one that fits for your custom need. And that's a part of the education process, again, just to give some homeowners some guidance, like getting going in the right direction. This may get you there, it may not, but here's at least what the process looks like and what it could look like. I'll say the biggest pitfall to a homeowner getting an ADU approved easily, we're helping reduce the cost. The average cost of an ADU could easily be $150,000. So we're helping to reduce that cost with the soft costs, the upfront, and the timing things, both of those. But financing is a huge obstacle. And that could be as much of your educational outreach to your community as anything. There's not a lot of conventional, where's the loan I take to go pick up an ADU plan and build it in my backyard? A lot of it's either a construction loan or back-end financing, and that can create a real challenge, especially when you're targeting some of your moderate to low income neighborhoods and housing ability. How do you get that off the table? There's a lot of semantics. This is more Randy's area than mine, but things like trusses or deferred submittals, any building official is out there going, yeah, I think everybody already raised a couple of questions about copyright law and there's some technical semantics that are challenging. Can you design a house that works on a slab or on a raised foundation? Yes, it takes a couple extra steps. We have been able to navigate the copyright law thing we are providing the city a set of plans and they own it. And if they want to distribute it, that's up to them. So Randy, I don't know, maybe you want to hit a couple
I've
more
got
of
more I
those?
can add on that, and that is a great one. And all the ones we've done, they're contracted in such a way that we don't own the plans. The city owns the plans at the end of the day. So that allows them to copy and distribute, and it's worked out well. Not change, can't change them. Change them, that's something else. But
Yeah.
you know, some of, I'm not gonna say pitfalls, probably hurdles. Let's go the other direction. You know, Scott, one that comes up is, you know, making sure that you're accounting for not only the fire requirements and the reduced setbacks, but also we've got high fire severity areas we have to account for, or WUI, which are similar but not, and we typically are trying, you know, get to know the city, incorporate optional details so they become, in that sense, customizable again. And you know, your pre-packaged order from Amazon solution doesn't get past those types of hurdles, and then that becomes a barrier for a homeowner who didn't know that was even a thing. And then we you know, we've got slopes always a bear. We try to put some parameters on that kind of gets worked out with various cities as to where we hit. We had one community where we had 6 different snow loads we had to account for, so that was an interesting path to put together a pre-approved one. But got that. There's definitely soil variation, and some of that stuff does limit the applicability, but we try to identify that up front so we can cover, you know, I always like to say 75% of the available lots. I don't know if it really gets there, but I like to think we come pretty close.
Yeah.
Back to the process question and working through some of the hurdles. I'm curious of, you know, how many people at the jurisdictions that we've worked with review these plans before they're, you know, fully vetted. Can you guys speak to that? That like maybe it's building, maybe it's
Sure.
planning,
That might be
etc.
mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be mine. Far too many and not enough is at the same time. Tell you the truth, I typically we're going to have 1 or 2 people within planning. There's a lot of people to start with, but we got a couple people in planning. Most jurisdictions do not take these to like an ARC or a planning commission, but some do. And then or if they do, it's as an informational item. It's not, let's go through the whole ARC, because at the end of the day, they are the city's plans. We are part of the city's team. We're not an outside person. So we try to work together to get whatever the city wants out of it. We all know that some communities have stronger elected bodies than others, and that may influence how that path goes. But typically there's not a lot of that, or or from a informational standpoint, there's a, you know, former contractor on the city council who wants to make sure, you know, this idea is in there or that, and that happens. So I encourage staff when we're in the design phase to pass the plans around. I always say that everybody lives in a house. They know, well, most people live in a house and they all know what one's supposed to look like. So they all have opinions of what this is. So pass it around, and you're going to get different looks at it. And what we find is we go through that process, we go through the design process, and not enough people have looked at it. And we get to the building permits, and then a couple of people sitting around looking at them go, well, they should have done this, they should have done that. And then it's just the opposite. So I encourage more input, believe it or not, than less.
Yeah, Randy, I think you're touching upon, I'm trying to monitor a little of chat without like answering, just going question by question, but I will say you're touching upon a lot of some of the questions that are coming up. And that's why when we start a project, we want the building official, we want anybody from planning, we want that collaborative nature. That's at the core of what we are as a group of architects and planners and engineers all working together. We just see ourselves as an extension of staff when we do these sorts of jobs, and we try to bring everybody together to collaborate. And that's when you can talk about, well, whoa, what about a soils report? Are we going to require this on each individual lot? No, but you probably got a bunch of soils reports throughout the city that you can say where your biggest troublesome sites are, and can we create a foundation plan that may work for that? So again, if you try to get too specific, you'll never be able to do this. There are some code minimums that take care of a lot of things, but things like deviations on plans that you're asking to customize a pre-approved drawing, and that's just not going to happen. So you really do need to work with your jurisdiction and say, what level building official are you comfortable with variations or options in a floor plan? Like Randy said, we had one who said, okay, yeah, you can add 2 feet or take it away. Well, we need structural calcs for both, but could you switch out your roof truss package and go from a hip roof to a gable? Could you, modify the weight load on that and go from Spanish style roof to asphalt shingles? Those are much, much more easy to do. Our goal is not to have you come back to us and ask RRM to change the plan to accommodate one homeowner. That's the 30% that aren't going to be accommodated in this. So there are some limitations. Again, we're not going to serve 100% of the people, but we're hoping that the trade-off in contextualism and community character can outweigh that.
Well, before I was also saying some other questions that we might want to get to answering.
Lots of them there.
But are there any kind of overarching takeaways that Randy or Scott you'd like to share with the group before we kind of pivot into our Q&A segment?
Maybe I'll just go first, Randy, and let you tag on. But I will just say we are all trying to stay on top. Like I said, in the last 6 years, there's 2 to 3 new ADU bills per year. What I thought was absolute chapter and verse just 2 years ago is getting changed now. The goal is, and I think everybody sees the ability for incremental development, small strategic placement of things like ADUs to really help our housing crisis. I'm a housing advocate. I'm a big proponent of that. Let's go. Let's figure out a way to help more people find more obtainable housing. So we're going to keep pivoting and keep trying to navigate these laws, and look forward to anything you may have to add to that, or how we all could be doing this better.
Randy, what about you?
Key takeaways here. We've gotten pretty good at this. I think it's becoming a successful program. Most jurisdictions we've worked with are seeing them moving off the shelves and getting utilized. And I think that is the testament to what we're trying to accomplish here. When we start these, we can draw a bunch of stuff, but the goal is to get them out off the shelves and being built. They're being adopted, and I know they are because I get regular calls from people asking questions and wondering how to attempt something that maybe that wasn't very, very clear from the city. And so I'm really happy with how this is going, and we learn more constantly. The next question that comes up, well, whether it's the one I don't know yet, but it's going to be some building official come up with an interesting challenge that now we got to start adapting into things, and that's part of the fun. But I think we've got a pretty good, tight, streamlined program right now that really works for most places.
Awesome. I'll just touch on it again. My takeaway is I think it's awesome to see that the state is, moving us into this. They're going to require that they at least be accepted in all jurisdictions. Doesn't necessarily require each jurisdiction to provide their own pre-approved plans. So it just provides further options for homeowners to consider for that additional flexibility that Scott and Randy really characterized of, aging in place on the same property, being able to assess whether they want to go forward with a pre-approved plan or maybe do more of a unique custom design that would be subject to maybe a little bit longer of a process. So just excited to see that there's options to meet different individuals' needs. So I'm going to try and go through the chat first, and then, like I said, if anyone has any, Scott, did you want to jump in?
No, well, I just said, Rich, I don't know how we're gonna go through the chat. There was a couple that I tried to answer, but there
Yeah,
was another one that I thought was really interesting. I thought I might just tackle to start,
for sure.
and give you a second
Yeah,
to
I'll,
go through
I'll do
some.
the same. You hit yours and I'll follow
Right. I
mine.
saw a
Yeah.
familiar name in there, so I wanted to reply to Michael Cass that, yeah, Michael asked, what suggestions do you have for pre-approved plans to minimize updates with future building code cycles? Stop changing building codes. You know what? That is a big one. Michael has some experience with this. I will tell you that the biggest change we're seeing in code cycles as it directly affects ADUs is energy efficiency. So Title 24 changes are quite often the biggest challenges. I will say we've had some really great success with looking at options. Options can go beyond, I want a bedroom versus a studio. Options can get into, I want extra insulation in my wall. I want a thicker wall. I want a higher R value. I want more energy efficiency, whether it's from your systems or into your plumbing fixtures, from a water efficiency standpoint. If you can create an option that may currently exceed required energy calculations, then next cycle you may actually meet them. There is no crystal ball. We do our best to stay abreast of those things, but that is transparency. One of the bigger challenges is how do you make sure these can survive a couple building cycles?
I was going to take a
Yeah.
stab
Okay,
at
go ahead.
answering one. See it from Liz Salazar, questioned whether AB 1332 requires cities to own each pre-approved ADU plan set. It does not require jurisdictions to own the pre-approved plan sets that are submitted. It just requires that they have a program in place to accept any and all ADU, pre-approved ADU submissions, is how the language is worded in the legislation. It does provide and then it says, to expand upon it further, it requires the contact information of the person who submitted the pre-approved plan be also provided in addition to the plan itself. And applicants are also able to request removing it from the jurisdiction's webpage if they don't want it formally posted in that manner.
Yeah, just building on that, it's uniquely different what that program is to what we're talking about here. These pre-approved are city-owned, city paid for. Nobody's paying fees to do these. This is, we're actually getting paid to do these for the city, and the city owns them. The pre-approved program that you're talking about there would have a manufacturer or me come through, and I submit a set of plans to that program. I'm going to pay the city the fees for the plan check review and all that. And then the city simply makes it available. They have to make a mechanism for the community to find it, website, and they can, then that end user can reach out to RM and say, how much would you charge me to use this plan? They're not free at that point through that program. What most cities do with the pre-approved plans that we develop with them, they're provided out there for free use. Although they are, so I saw someone there, how do you prevent this from spreading around and other jurisdictions using them? We watermark these. We have two sets of plans, one that is the approval set, it's a record set for the city, and then there are unstamped plans for the community, for the end users that are, for use, only approved for use in the city of. And that, now if another jurisdiction takes that watermarked thing in and approves it, that, I guess that's on to them at the end of the day. That happens to, 10 times over a year, it happens. We're not responsible. That is kind of the world we also live in, but that's how that plays out typically. I did see something about some processing here. The way we generate these typically is there's a site, an example site plan with a spot for people to fill in their own site information. And there is a review process the city does for the site. That'll vary depending on the location, the slope, the soils conditions, the community, as how detailed they want to be. But all the site related stuff, a homeowner may have to hire someone to put that together if they don't have the experience or it's too complex. So that still gets reviewed, and that's how we make sure it actually fits on the site and stormwater is dealt with and all those types of things. So yeah, there's still a component. Then that does also require time.
Rachel, I'm
Randy,
gonna try. Oh, go ahead.
no. I was curious about maybe typical pre-approved plans that we've provided and like the size of them. I see a question from Mike about whether we think that we would see pre-approved plans for efficiency units or studios at or below that 300 square foot. So just kind of,
We
what
Our
was
tiniest is 183, isn't it?
yeah, Appendix
wow.
J. I want any building officials to look that up and tell me if you've ever adopted or used it.
Oh yeah, Appendix
Yes.
J. Yes, look into that, people. That is a great path to getting some cool stuff done, and not many people have adopted it.
Rachel, again, that goes back to the idea of what is your city's specific needs. If you have some very challenging sites, getting down in efficiency units, we've done as small as 180. We've done quite a few under 450. There's some fee breaks that we often try to look into. If you're over 500 square feet, are you paying school fees or getting into other things? Again, in the effort of attainability and affordability, trying to work within a city to make sure that we're hitting some of those marks matter. Somebody else asked about timing and costs. There's a little variability into that. We still get plan checked and approved. So part of that's on the city side. I think at a minimum would be 6 months. I don't know that we've gone much longer than a year unless we were doing some sort of outreach material, education material, community engagement, like you see behind Rachel right now. So that can vary and be tailored to what your city needs. I think that answered at least a couple more of those.
Yeah, I wanted to add to the actual review of, especially ADU, more unique ADU submit or plan check submissions. AB 2221, which came out at the beginning of last year, required the approval or denial of an ADU application within 60 days. And it expands the definition of permitting agency to include planning or building departments, utilities, and special districts. I know we had a question about, still having some difficulties getting through the process dealing with utility metering, fire clearances. And so just kind of wanted to note that that's been an avenue. There is language in that particular legislation that, starts the 60-day clock from the time of a completed application. And so, if you are missing something and as part of your submission, it's definitely been, you can't start the clock just yet, but I think that's been something working with jurisdictions in at least the Central Coast region, that they're all aware of that timeline. And, some jurisdictions that I've worked in, they have a dedicated ADU plan checker, which has been super helpful to, have someone that knows the ordinances and the subsequent amendments in and out, the ins and outs of those amendments, that is. So just wanted to tack that kind of caveat on. I know we have about 4 more minutes left. Randy or Scott, are there any other questions that you see?
I'll just say I appreciate my fellow Fresnians for adding a bunch of answers. Help each other here. I think that's great. There are a lot of example pre-approved plans in different municipalities. We've done them for both counties and cities. So the unincorporated areas are often quite in demand and often easier to accommodate than some of the city logging patterns. Although Fresno has done something kind of unique. Well, if you want to look into their tiny housing as an ADU, that's one of the few jurisdictions getting a little more progressive with that. Beyond that, I know HCD and budget cuts are coming, and oh my gosh, what happened with all the funding? That varies. We've tailored some small plans, doing 2 or 3 plans for a municipality down, and we've done 8 or 9 for others. So yeah, we want to customize for anybody, and what the challenge is not, what can you do? It's more of what's going to happen if you don't do something. So I think that's the important thing is just trying to stay abreast, talking to each other here. I love seeing the chat and everybody seeing each other's answers. That's really exciting.
Any last thoughts? This has been so great. I could talk about ADUs all day, I feel like.
We should probably do, I'm seeing can we do one last round of closing and actually state our names again? Because basically that's saying, Scott, you talk way too fast, and can you slow down a little bit? So really excited. My name's Scott Martin. I'm a partner and principal here at RRM Design Group. I have an ADU myself, and I love that we are trying to do more of these types of projects. So thank you all so much for attending. Randy?
Yeah, Randy Russum, led 15 of these projects or more than that at this point across the state. Like I said, 30-year architect, principal at RRM. Lisa, you asked some good questions I haven't been able to get to. You're welcome to reach out and happy to answer them separately. Rachel, feel free to throw our emails up there.
Yeah, for sure. I am Rachel Hollander. I'm a land use planner, RM, work on both sides of the counter, have you will, doing some ordinance amendments for jurisdictions that are clients, and then also working as an agent or applicant helping get ADUs through the process. I did post my email, and I think, yeah, Scott and Randy did as well. Amy, I see your question about CM credits. I think that's a great idea. I'm on the Central Coast APA section board, and I can work with our legislative officer and professional development officer and see if that's a possibility to do them after the fact. We will be sending a email to the those invited and those that were registered and participated in today's session with the YouTube link and our contact information as well. And if we're able to send out the CM credit code for AICP members. Well, I think we hit our time. So Scott and Randy, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your thoughts on this topic. And thank you all for attending. We are super happy that you were all able to join and excited to continue the conversation of ADUs.
Yeah,
Thank
hope it
you.
was helpful. Yeah, it was fun. Lots more we could say, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Now.